Alright, all you backpacking gear nerds out there, it is the end of the season, the cold weather is moving in, and that means it's time for the end of the season gear review. Now normally I would spend a long time giving you a little bit of a background as to how the whole hiking season went, but you don't want to hear that and I don't want to do it, so let's just jump right in. So my first piece of gear is also one of the ones that I never got around to doing an first impressions video on. But let's face it, nobody cares about my first impressions, they only want to hear how the gear worked, and so I'm going to oblige. So let's jump right into the Nemo Tensor All-Season Sleeping Pad. Now this isn't the first time I've used a Nemo Tensor pad. Previously I was using, well, the original Tensor Nemo pad. But this year, or last season, Nemo decided to break the Tensor up into three different pads. The Tensor Trail, the Tensor All-Season, which I ended up getting, and the Tensor Extreme Weather. Of course, out of the three of those, I decided to go with the Tensor All-Season. So why did I go with All-Season? Well, I had a better blend of weight and R value that I was looking for in a pad. The Tensor Trail has a lower R value, and the Tensor Extreme Conditions has an extremely high R value, which I didn't need, so I went with this one. So let's get into the quick nuts and bolts. This is the Tensor All-Season Long Wide. It has an R value of 5.4. This is accomplished by using 2 layers of floating mylar, which is what allows it to have that insulation without all the crinkly noise. Being a long wide, it comes in at 78 inches long by 25 inches wide, and it retails at $229.95. The pad is also 3.5 inches thick, which will come into play here a little bit. Alright, with all that out of the way, how did the Tensor All-Season stack up with the original Tensor? And what did I like about it throughout the season? Let's go. So there are a couple big updates that were made between the original Tensor and the Tensor All-Season. The first one being the R value. The R value of the Tensor was just over 4. The All-Season Tensor is 5.4, which is a pretty considerable R value update. And again, it's done by 2 layers of mylar versus 1. The other really big update to these is that the Tensor All-Season is 3.5 inches thick versus the original 3 inches thick of the original Tensor. Now, half an inch doesn't seem like a big deal, but I can tell you from experience that it made a pretty big difference. The last update that they made to this pad is the actual valve assembly itself. So in the new series of Tensors, they used a softer rubber in the valve, which makes it much easier to pull the valve without pulling the whole thing out. So in the middle of the night when I needed to make micro adjustments, when I went to go open up the valve with the older one, oftentimes I would pull the whole valve and I'd dump myself down on the ground. Then I'd have to refill it, and that's not fun. But with the softer rubber on this, I have yet to have that problem. So that in itself, huge update. Now you're probably thinking, all of those new updates, this thing has to weigh at least a little bit more than this pad. That's what I thought, so I went ahead and weighed them. Now, I do have this in its stuff sack just for storage purposes, but I don't bring a storage sack or that stuff with me on trip, so I went ahead and took them out of their storage sacks and weighed them. I still don't understand the results, because this one, by itself, weighed 1 pound, 4.3 ounces. This one, the pad by itself, also weighed 1 pound, 4.3 ounces. Math doesn't compute. How, Nemo? How? That's right. Somehow Nemo gave us an extra ½ inch of thickness as well as an extra 1.4 R value without actually adding any weight. I don't get it. It does not science. But how, Nemo? How? So how did it actually perform? Frankly, it performed great. The extra R value is definitely noticeable on those cooler nights, and that extra ½ inch of thickness really does make a pretty big difference, because I liked the Tensor, but admittedly it wasn't the thickest pad, and I'm not the smallest dude, and although I never came in contact with the ground on my side, it definitely was noticeable that it was thinner. That extra ½ inch really worked out. Nice job, Nemo. Additionally, as the Nemos are known, it was fairly quiet. Didn't have any major issues with noise, and overall extremely comfortable. Very easy to fill. Not a very big noticeable difference in fill time with the extra ½ inch of thickness. And the new valve assembly definitely made life easier. I didn't dump myself out on the ground once, which I routinely did with the other pad. This is my biggest pet peeve about that pad. So all in all, this was definitely a good upgrade, and I gotta hand it to Nemo. You guys killed it with this one. Alright, so this next piece of equipment is probably the most surprising piece of equipment that I've added to my kit lately, and that is the FlexTail Zero air mattress pump. Now when this came out, I was immediately skeptical. I didn't see any reason why I should ever have a pump on a backpacking trip for a pad. It's not that big of a deal, but I went ahead and gave it a shot. And I'm really glad I did, because over the last 2 seasons, this thing has performed phenomenally. Whatever that word is. Phenomenally. English hard. Anyways, it did an absolutely great job. Way better than I ever expected. And it made me realize just how much I did not enjoy blowing up my pad. Even with an air mattress sack, it takes some time and just didn't really enjoy it. And this guy, with his battery, only weighs a couple ounces more than the fill sack that I used. So, hardly even noticeable. And it worked amazingly. All you had to do was plug it into the pad, turn it on, go do something else, come back, and it's almost full. A couple top-off breaths and you're good to go. Also, using it on a 4-day trip, 3 nights, battery worked fine. I have not had to charge this in the field once. It's just performed really well, and I really like it. It's not too loud, and frankly, it ended up being something I never thought I would need, but now I don't want to leave it behind. So all in all, this was a good investment as well. Alright, next up for this year is probably my most anticipated piece of equipment, which is my camp chair, which in this case is the Nemo Moonlight Elite chair. So I had a lot of high hopes for this chair, and overall, it mostly produced, but it did have a couple issues with it. Mainly though, it was very comfortable. It's considerably lighter than the chair that I was using, which was a Big Agnes, and generally worked out pretty well. I definitely like the fact that it has the included ground net that is also the bag. That came in handy on a couple trips, including one lunch in kind of a boggy spot where I watched my 2 companions slowly sink in the ground and I stayed right on top. That was, I think, by far one of the coolest features of this chair. The other thing he said is it was very comfortable. I did not have the issues with it digging into my shoulders like some people have had, but I understand that some people definitely have that. So all in all, as far as functionality and comfort, it worked pretty well. Now I mentioned I had a couple issues with it. The first one actually was taken care of by Nemo really quickly. So I noticed that after putting it into a bag, the actual outer bag portion, the bag/ground net, had ripped at one of the seams. The netting portion actually had come out of the seam. And I had only had it for a little bit, so I contacted Nemo, said, hey, got this tear. And Nemo got right back to me within the next day and said, oh yes, unfortunately we've had a small amount of those that had that issue. No problem, we'll send you a new one. Got a new one in a week, so kudos to Nemo's customer service on that one. Now the other minor issue I had with this chair is one of the tips of the sections that plugs into the chair itself. That pole section tip has basically kind of wants to unscrew itself inside the housing. And I think that I may have actually possibly damaged it at one point, but basically what happens is because it plugs into the chair with these nice little round plugs, when I go to pull out, it pulls that whole thing out, and then I have to thread it back in and kind of angle it to pop it out because I can't pull the knob out of the chair unless it's screwed into the pole. Again, this is a minor issue. It's really more of an inconvenience than anything else. But I have no doubt that if I get a hold of Nemo, they'll make it right. I just haven't done it yet. So again, it's something that overall I think I can live with. I like the chair more than just that minor thing, but it is something to be concerned about. So overall, I'm really happy with the performance of this chair. It's got some issues. Nothing's perfect, and it is the first year that it came out, so I have no doubt that those issues will be resolved in time because Nemo is one of those brands that does seem to quickly learn from its, I won't even call them mistakes, issues. And I'm excited to see how this chair continues to evolve. So overall, pretty decent solid grade on this one. Alright, next up is another one of those tiny pieces of gear that I did not think I would ever need until I saw it, and that was the Jericho gear driver. This thing is awesome, and you owe it to yourself to get this because I put this thing through the paces and it has definitely worked out. Now what is the driver? Well, simply it allows you to use it to push in stakes. This will work with groundhog, MSR groundhog stake, which is what I use, as well as to put on the end of the deuce camp trowel. Because one of the biggest issues with this is that because of the way it's designed, it has pretty sharp edges on the handle. which again, I didn't think was that big of a deal before I used it, but now that I've had the dirt digger or the driver and have used it, it definitely helps. Now, if there is one test that I can put this thing through, it's that using it in the notoriously tough Montana soil. The dirt around here is rocky and tough and clayey, and it's just really tough to get things into. I have holes in the bottom of my shoes from driving my stakes into the ground, and I always hated it. This thing has performed phenomenally. Other than a little bit of, I don't know, scoring inside the stake receiver, it's worked wonderful. Again, super small, super simple. It just works. Good job, man. Alright, so another piece of equipment that was kind of an unexpected upgrade, and because of that I also did not do an introduction or first impression video on this one, is my new Z-Pax minimalist trekking poles. Now, I had been thinking about updating my trekking poles because previously I was using a pair of leaky Z-fold poles, and unfortunately the Z-fold poles didn't work with my new Pax trekking pole holding straps. And so I was looking for something that I could use with that, and also wanted something that would be a little bit more usable with my trekking pole tent. That said, I hadn't planned on replacing them, but then Z-Pax sent me a text message saying that their trekking poles were buy one get one free because they sell them individually as well as in pairs. And so basically I was able to get a set for the price of half, and so I went ahead and pulled the trigger. So the Z-Pax minimalist trekking pole is a 3-section carbon fiber pole. The ones that I got come with a cork handle, but they also are available in an all foam handle. And they do have main grip as well as a lower grip for going up hills, carbon fiber or carbide tip, and flick locks for the extension. This is a pretty standard trekking pole. Each pole weighs 7.7 ounces or 15.3 ounces for the pair. So they're not the lightest ones on the market, but they're pretty darn light. And again, I went with the cork grip handles. And so far, I've loved them. They definitely work with my pack, which is nice. They are lighter than my original trekking poles. They're comfortable to use, and like I said, the trekking poles, there's not really anything out there that's kind of rewriting the rules on trekking poles, except Durson Gear Company, but we're not going to talk about that because I didn't get those. But overall, I was really happy with these. Again, a little bit lighter, more easy to use, and they just worked well. The only issue that I had with it was on one of my trips, I did lose one of the baskets. Fortunately, it was an out and back trip, and by some miracle, I found the basket on my way out, and I put it back on. I think the main or only reason for that was I didn't have it screwed on all the way, so I think that one was on me, because I haven't had that issue at all since then. But this trekking pole does work great with my trekking pole tent, which makes sense because Z-Pax makes stuff with trekking pole tents, and so our trekking poles would probably be ones that would work well with one of those kind of tents. Another piece of new gear for this season that worked out really well for me was my Chicken Tramper Ultralight Gear cell phone pocket. This is a pocket that straps onto my pack strap. It is a universal connector. It will work with Osprey style straps as well as daisy chain style straps for those cottage brand type packs like mine. And this is again one of those things I gave a shot because it seemed kind of interesting and turned out to be a great investment. So this one again is a cell phone holder. It has a Velcro top on there to allow access for, and will fit my iPhone. And again, it solved a problem that I didn't realize was a problem until I fixed it, which was I didn't really enjoy having my cell phone in my pocket, and I also didn't like it in my fanny pack. And so this puts it right on the shoulder strap, so it's super easy to get a hold of, and also has another small pocket for accessories here, so that was really helpful for carrying around my glasses when I had my sunglasses on, or vice versa, as well as chapsticks, things like that, Snickers bar. But again, turned out to be a really useful little pocket. Now there is a feature on it that I don't use because I typically don't wear earbuds when I'm hiking, but some people like to have the strap or the earbuds with the straps in them so that they don't lose the bud. And so you can actually tuck the top in, and there is a Velcro strap on the inside, that you can put down, and that will keep your cell phone from falling out while still having the cord come out. So I think that's more attuned to through hikers, but is a feature that I think is pretty awesome that the guys over at Chicken Shrimper thought out. So again, I have absolutely loved this product. It has worked well in a way that I didn't expect it to, and it's become really handy. All their products actually are really good, and I really like this company, and I've gotten to know those guys. All right, the last piece of gear I wanted to go over were my storage bags from Hilltop Packs. Now I have two of them. One of them is a storage bag for the pot, and then there's a smaller bag for the actual stove itself. Now again, these are just storage bags, so they're not exactly reinventing the wheel here, but they are really handy and they're really well made, and I really like, again, the company Hilltop Packs. So these are DCF bags, and they're very well made, and they're almost perfectly sized for my setup, and have really made organizing this a lot easier. I used to not actually carry everything in a bag, but this just makes locating it and keeping track of everything just way easier. And by removing the actual stuff sack for the stove, it'll fit more easily into the whole system with a fuel can. But again, just really well made, do the job really well, super easy, super great company. Couldn't be happier. Ben, thanks, they worked great. All right, and that's it. Just down and dirty, easy review of the gear that I've used. Not going into too many specifics, but overall I would say generally this stuff worked really well, and I've been really happy with the gear that I've gotten. A couple minor issues here and there, but overall I think the gear worked out really well for me. It may or may not work out well for you, but at least now you know how I felt about the stuff. I have a couple other honorary mentions I want to do. One of them I just got and haven't had a chance to use, but I mean, it's just a water bottle and it works out pretty well. And that is the Squawk bottle from Squawk Gear. And this was turned on to me by Devin Ashby, and I think it's really cool. So basically, it's made out of the same kind of material as an Nalgene. It does have a wide mouth, but the interesting feature about this is, unlike a Nalgene, it is tall and narrow. It's the same diameter and size, basically, of a smart water bottle, which is what I currently use. Now, smart water bottles are lighter. This is going to be a little bit heavier, but what I like about this is the wide mouth top. Smart water bottles were great, but I really struggle to fill them up with my filter system and not get my feet wet in the process. And so I'm looking forward to being able to use the wide mouth. So this one, I'm kind of excited to try out. The other honorable mention, again, revolving around my good buddy Devin, is this first aid kit, which I ordered from him. These are made by him, and it's gone out on one or two trips. And again, nothing super, groundbreaking, just a really well made bag. It's waterproof and convenient, does the job, fits everything I need for my first aid kit, and just works well. So great job, Devin. If you want one of these, get a hold of him. He'll try and make one up for you. That's it, everybody. Hope you had a great season. I look forward to reviewing a little bit more gear. Next year is definitely going to be an exciting season. I've got some really cool trips planned, including it looks most likely that my big trip for the season is going to go forward, which is going to be my 12-day, 154-mile self-created route across the Ozorka Beartooth Wilderness. And I am stoked. So stay tuned for more updates on that. And if you have any questions about the gear, give me those in the comments below. What's a piece of gear that worked out really well for you this year as well? Put that in there in comments. And as always, keep hiking on.